Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you stop chasing him is the moment everything in your life begins to change. Because the truth is, the more you chase someone who's not choosing you, the further you run from yourself. You start trading your peace for attention, your worth for crumbs, your confidence for confusion. And for what? The second you stop trying to prove your value to someone who can't see it, your energy shifts. They'll feel it. The world will feel it, because when you stop chasing, you stop begging to be chosen, and start remembering that you were the prize all along. And ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every woman's life when she finally realizes she's been giving her energy to something or someone that doesn't give back. It's the moment she stops overthinking every text, stops waiting for that reply, stops replaying conversations trying to figure out what she could have said differently. It's the moment she decides to stop chasing him, and when that happens, everything changes, and because chasing isn't love. Chasing is fear. It's the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not being enough, the fear that if you stop trying, he'll move on and you'll lose him. But the truth is, if someone can only stay in your life by being chased, they were never really yours to begin with. The moment you stop chasing, you force life to reveal what was real and what was just an illusion of potential. You give space for truth to breathe, and you see, when you're chasing, you're putting him in the driver's seat. You start living reactively. Your emotions become tied to how much attention he gives you, how available he is, how he feels that day. You stop being the main character in your own life and become a side character in his. That's not power. That's dependency disguised as devotion, and it drains you, because no amount of effort can compensate for someone else's lack of interest. No amount of showing up, understanding, or loving harder can make someone choose you who doesn't want to. But the moment you stop chasing, something inside you begins to wake up. You remember who you were before him, the woman who had her own dreams, her own peace, her own energy that didn't revolve around a what if. You start realizing that love isn't supposed to feel like constantly convincing someone to stay. It's supposed to feel mutual, calm, safe, and when you stop chasing, you create space for that kind of love to find you. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing is the moment they often start noticing. Suddenly, your absence feels louder than your presence ever did. They start to wonder what changed, what happened, what you're thinking. Because people notice when you stop making them your priority, but that's not the point. The point isn't to stop chasing so they'll come back. The point is to stop chasing so you can come back to yourself. And when you no longer need to prove your worth through someone else's validation, you begin to radiate a different energy. A confident calmness replaces anxiety. You're not waiting for a message, you're writing your own story. You're not sitting by the phone, you're out there living a life that excites you, and ironically, that's when people become drawn to you. Because confidence is magnetic, peace is attractive. A woman who knows she doesn't need to chase is irresistible. And the truth is, the person who's meant for you won't need to be chased. They'll meet you halfway. They'll make an effort. They'll communicate clearly. They'll give you consistency, not confusion. But when you're caught up in chasing the wrong one, you don't even have room to receive the right one. You're too busy trying to build a home in someone's heart who hasn't even unlocked the door. And there's a certain power that comes from walking away not out of anger, not to prove a point, but from a place of self-respect. When you stop chasing, you're no longer saying, "Please choose me." You're saying, "I choose me." You reclaim your emotional energy, your mental clarity, your peace. You stop settling for crumbs and start demanding the feast you deserve. And that shift, it's the beginning of everything changing. And think about how much mental space chasing takes up. The checking, the waiting, the hoping, the doubting. It becomes a full-time job. You wake up thinking about him and go to sleep analyzing him. But when you stop chasing, that space becomes yours again. Suddenly, you have energy to create, to grow, to invest in yourself. You start noticing opportunities you used to overlook because your focus was consumed by someone who wasn't even giving you the same in return. And then something beautiful happens. You stop needing closure. You stop needing to know why he didn't choose you, or what went wrong, or whether he ever cared. Because you understand that sometimes silence is closure, sometimes absence is clarity. You realize that his inability to see your value doesn't make you less valuable. It just means he wasn't ready for the kind of love you offer, and that's not your responsibility to fix. And the moment you stop chasing is the moment you take your power back. It's when you remember that your worth doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. It's when you stop being the one who always reaches out, who always initiates, who always tries to make things work while the other person gives the bare minimum. It's when you finally say, "If you want me, show me. If you don't, that's okay too. But I'm done begging for the bare minimum." And here's what's incredible. You begin to attract differently. You attract people who match your energy, who appreciate your presence, who don't need to be convinced. You start setting boundaries effortlessly because you know what peace feels like now, and you're not willing to trade it for chaos. You stop falling for potential and start valuing patterns. You stop chasing chemistry and start craving consistency. And it's not that your heart suddenly becomes cold, it becomes wiser. You learn to love without losing yourself. You learn that silence can be more powerful than words, that distance can say more than explanations, and that self-respect is the most beautiful kind of confidence. You begin to realize that when someone truly values you, they'll meet you where you are. You won't have to beg for effort. You won't have to decode mixed signals. You won't have to chase. And sometimes the greatest love story you'll ever have is the one you build with yourself after you stop chasing the wrong one. Because you'll look back and realize that everything you were trying to get from someone else, attention, validation, connection, you were capable of giving to yourself all along. You'll understand that you were never too much, never too emotional, never too demanding. You were just asking the wrong person. And when you embody that truth, everything changes. The people you attract, the boundaries you set, the peace you feel, it all shifts. You stop being afraid of losing people and start being afraid of losing yourself again. You stop seeing rejection as a reflection of your worth and start seeing it as redirection towards something better. You stop chasing and start choosing, choosing peace over chaos, alignment over attention, reality over fantasy. And that's when love starts to feel easy. That's when you stop confusing intensity with intimacy or attention with affection. You start realizing that real love doesn't make you question your value. It reminds you of it. It doesn't make you anxious. It makes you grounded. It doesn't require chasing. It grows effortlessly when both people are moving in the same direction. And the moment you stop chasing him, you'll start noticing how life begins to meet you where you are. Opportunities align, confidence grows, peace returns, and you realize that love was never meant to be a chase, it was meant to be a choice. And you start to see the difference between attachment and connection. Attachment is what keeps you holding on, even when you know it's hurting you. It's what makes you believe that if you just hang in there long enough, he'll finally see your worth, he'll finally change, he'll finally give you what you've been giving him all along. But connection, that's different. Connection doesn't need chasing, it flows, it feels mutual. It's two people choosing each other again and again, without one person constantly trying to prove themselves worthy of love. And when you stop chasing, you allow yourself to break free from that illusion of control, because that's what chasing really is, an attempt to control the uncontrollable. You keep thinking, if I say the right thing, if I show how much I care, if I prove my loyalty, maybe then he'll choose me. But the truth is, love that needs convincing isn't love, it's negotiation. And every time you negotiate your worth for someone's attention, you lose a little more of yourself. But when you let go, you start to understand that love is not earned through effort, it's experienced through alignment. And you begin to notice how peaceful life feels when you no longer have to strategize your emotions. You're not overanalyzing his tone, his timing, his silence. You stop checking if he's seen your story. You stop replaying that last conversation, wondering if you pushed too hard. You're no longer living in emotional limbo, trapped between hope and disappointment, and in that quiet space you find clarity. You start to see the situation for what it really was, not a great love story, but a great lesson. A lesson that taught you what happens when you give too much of yourself to someone who's only halfway in. And that's when you start to understand the power of emotional detachment, not detachment in a cold, uncaring way, but in a self-protective, peaceful way. You stop reacting to every inconsistency because you no longer need to. You stop explaining your worth because you know it's self-evident. You stop trying to be chosen and start realizing that the right person doesn't need convincing. They'll see your value naturally. Detachment gives you freedom. It gives you the power to say, I love you, but I love myself more. It reminds you that love should add to your life, not consume it. And when you stop chasing him, you begin to look around and realize how much of your world you've been missing. The hobbies you've neglected, the friends you've ignored, the goals you've postponed because your energy was wrapped around him. You start rediscovering yourself piece by piece. You realize how beautiful it feels to wake up and not have your mood depend on someone else's attention. You begin to fill your own cup instead of waiting for someone else to do it. And ironically, the more fulfilled you become within yourself, the less you feel the need to chase anything or anyone. And there's an unshakable kind of power that comes with no longer needing validation. You don't need to be reassured that you're special. You already know. You don't need to be told you're loved to feel loved, because you've built a relationship with yourself that no one can take away. That's when you become magnetic. People can sense when you're not desperate for attention, when your peace is not negotiable. That kind of confidence doesn't just attract, it inspires. And when he notices the shift, because he will, you'll feel the difference. He'll start reaching out more. He'll start noticing what he took for granted. He'll feel the absence of your energy. But by then, something inside you will have changed. You'll see that his attention, while flattering, no longer has power over you. Because once you've tasted peace, chaos no longer feels romantic. Once you've experienced the freedom of not chasing, being chased doesn't excite you. It feels small compared to the growth you've found within yourself. And you start to understand that the version of you who chased was operating from scarcity. She believed that love was limited, that good men were rare, that she had to hold onto something even if it was breaking her. But the woman you've become knows better. She knows that love isn't scarce, it's abundant. She knows that walking away doesn't mean losing, it means making space for what's meant for her. She knows that she doesn't have to fight for love because real love fights alongside her, not against her. And here's the thing, when you stop chasing, you begin to raise your standards not just in love, but in every part of your life. You start asking for more because you finally believe you deserve it. You stop accepting half effort, half love, half truths. You stop settling for situations that make you feel anxious, small, or uncertain. You stop making excuses for people's inconsistencies. You realize that he's busy is not a valid reason for emotional neglect. You understand that attention without intention is manipulation. And you refuse to participate in that anymore. And you begin to attract peace instead of drama, effort instead of excuses, consistency instead of confusion. Because the energy you project, the one that says, I am whole, I am enough, I don't chase, is the same energy that returns to you. You become the kind of woman who doesn't need to demand respect because it's felt in your presence. You don't need to beg for love because it naturally gravitates toward you, and that's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's knowing that when you stop pouring into the wrong places, life starts pouring back into you, and there's also a deeper emotional shift that happens. You stop blaming yourself for why things didn't work out. You stop thinking, if I were prettier, more patient, less emotional, maybe he would have stayed. You realize that his lack of effort was never about your lack of worth. You stop personalizing someone else's emotional unavailability. Because someone who's not ready to love can't love you better no matter how much you give. And that's not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of where they are in their own journey. Letting go becomes easier when you understand that it's not rejection, it's redirection, and you start living again. Really living. You laugh more genuinely, you sleep more peacefully, you make decisions without fear of how he'll perceive them. You start to notice how your glow returns not because he came back, but because you did. You come home to yourself. That's the shift the universe was waiting for. Because when you choose yourself, everything around you begins to rearrange in your favor. You attract people, opportunities, and experiences that match your new vibration of self-worth. And that's when you truly understand what it means to love without losing yourself. You can still care deeply, but not cling. You can still give love, but not abandon your boundaries. You can still desire connection, but not depend on it for validation. You learn that love is healthiest when it's rooted in self-respect. You can love someone and still choose to walk away if it means protecting your peace, because real love never requires you to betray yourself to keep it alive. And when you stop chasing, you start receiving. You start receiving attention that feels safe, not sporadic. You start receiving effort that's consistent, not conditional. You start receiving love that's clear, not confusing. And most importantly, you start receiving your own approval, which turns out to be the only validation you ever really needed. And you'll look back one day and realize that the version of you who chased wasn't weak. She was just learning. She was trying to love in the only way she knew how, before she understood that real love doesn't require running after someone who's walking away. She had to go through that phase to become the woman who now stands tall, knowing her worth, refusing to settle. That version of you deserves compassion, not shame, because without her, you wouldn't have learned what it means to stop chasing and start choosing yourself. And the beauty is that once you stop chasing him, you stop chasing everything that drains you: approval, closure, validation, attention. You start choosing alignment over attachment. You begin to understand that love is not something you find in someone else. It's something you cultivate within. And once you have that, you stop running after anyone because you know that the right one will walk beside you. And you begin to realize how powerful stillness can be. When you no longer chase, when you simply stand in your truth and allow things to unfold, you see how everything that's meant for you naturally gravitates back. You no longer have to force conversations, plan encounters, or script moments that are supposed to be spontaneous. You just live. You move through life with a quiet kind of confidence that says, if it's right for me, it will flow. If it's not, I'll be fine. That mindset changes everything: your energy, your interactions, your peace, because peace becomes the new standard, and anything that disrupts it becomes an easy no. And it's almost shocking how much emotional clarity you gain when you're no longer distracted by the need to chase. You can finally see situations for what they are, not what you want them to be. You notice how often you were mistaking potential for effort, words for action, attention for intention. You start to hold people accountable not by confrontation, but by observation. You simply watch how they show up, and that tells you everything you need to know. You stop trying to fill in the gaps with your imagination, and instead, you let the truth reveal itself through consistency, or the lack of it. And that's the moment you step into emotional maturity, because maturity isn't about suppressing your feelings, it's about mastering your response to them. You can love someone deeply and still not tolerate their inconsistency. You can miss them and still move on. You can care and still choose distance. That's what strength looks like. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's knowing that you can't build love on confusion. It's understanding that someone's mixed signals are their way of keeping you close enough to feed their ego, but far enough to avoid commitment. And you no longer play that game because you've outgrown it. And when you stop chasing, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You start to see patterns that once blinded you. You recognize that every time you chased, you were abandoning your standards a little bit more. You were making excuses like, he's just busy, or he's not good at expressing himself, or he just needs time. But time doesn't change people, accountability does. Effort does, awareness does, and when someone truly values you, they don't need endless time to realize it, they act on it. When you stop chasing, you stop making excuses for what's simply a lack of effort. And you begin to embody a new kind of self-respect, one that doesn't need to announce itself, one that can walk away quietly and still be heard. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop negotiating for the bare minimum. You stop showing people how to treat you because you understand that your energy already teaches them. And those who can't meet you there, you let them fall away naturally, without bitterness, without revenge, without the need to prove a point. Because you've learned that walking away with your dignity intact is louder than any argument. And in that space of letting go, something powerful happens. You start attracting from abundance instead of fear. You stop needing love to complete you and start wanting love to complement you. There's a big difference. When love complements you, it adds to what's already whole. It doesn't demand you to shrink, to chase, to compromise your peace. You start to feel secure not because someone chose you, but because you chose yourself first. And from that place of security, you attract people who vibrate at the same frequency, people who see your worth without you having to advertise it. And you also begin to redefine what love looks like. You realize that real love doesn't make you question your worth, it reminds you of it. It doesn't confuse you, it clarifies. It doesn't drain you, it fills you. You start to crave stability, honesty, effort, and emotional availability instead of excitement that comes with uncertainty. You stop mistaking butterflies for chemistry and start understanding that the real thing feels calm, not chaotic. The old version of you was addicted to the chase, the thrill of being chosen. The new version of you is addicted to peace, to mutuality, to authenticity. And you'll notice that people respond to this new energy differently. Some will admire it, others will feel intimidated by it. The ones who thrived on your pursuit will try to re-enter your life the moment they feel your detachment. They'll sense that something is different. Your energy no longer feeds their ego. They might reach out again, not because they've changed, but because they miss the way you made them feel important. But you'll see through it this time. You'll feel the emptiness behind their words, the pattern repeating itself. And for the first time, you'll have no desire to chase that feeling anymore. You'll choose peace instead of the temporary high of attention. And when you stop chasing, you also stop trying to control the timing of your life. You trust the process. You stop asking, when will it happen, and start saying, I know it will happen. You start living with patience instead of panic. You realize that your job isn't to force anything. It's to align yourself so that what's meant for you can find you easily. That's why everything starts to shift, because you stop pushing and start allowing. You stop gripping so tightly, and life begins to flow in ways you couldn't have imagined when you were consumed by chasing something that wasn't meant to stay. And you become so in tune with your own worth that your standards are no longer something you have to remember. They become who you are. You don't have to think about what you'll tolerate. Your energy naturally rejects what doesn't align. You no longer explain your boundaries, you simply live them. And when someone truly values you, they won't see your boundaries as walls. They'll see them as guidance for how to love you better. You'll stop settling for almost relationships, half-hearted efforts, and one-sided communication. You'll start desiring something deeper, something grounded, something real. And there's also this beautiful side effect that comes with detachment. Your creativity, your ambition, your passion, they all start to flourish again. The energy that was once spent overanalyzing texts, wondering what you did wrong, trying to decode mixed signals, is now redirected toward yourself. You'll find yourself diving into new goals, exploring new parts of who you are. You start becoming magnetic not because you're chasing success, but because you're aligned with it. The more you invest in your growth, the more fulfilled you become, and that fulfillment shines through everything you do. And you'll also find that your emotional capacity expands. You'll be able to love deeper because your love will no longer come from fear. You won't be loving people hoping they'll fill a void. You'll love them from a place of wholeness. You'll give freely, but with discernment. You'll understand that love without boundaries leads to self-betrayal, and love with boundaries creates safety. You'll love with an open heart but a strong spine. You'll love from choice, not from need. And as time goes on, you'll realize that the moment you stopped chasing him wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of everything. It was the moment you shifted from proving your worth to embodying it. It was the moment you stopped trying to earn love and started becoming love. You no longer live in anxiety about losing someone because you've built something that can't be taken away. Your peace, your confidence, your self-trust. You no longer look outward for completion because you've already found it within, and you'll start to see love as something that should elevate you, not exhaust you. You'll see relationships as partnerships, not performances. You'll realize that love should never make you lose yourself to keep someone else interested. You'll stop romanticizing effortlessness in others and start appreciating effort in both directions. Because real love, healthy love, doesn't require chasing. It requires showing up. It requires presence, honesty, and consistency from both sides. And through it all, you'll learn that walking away doesn't always mean you stopped caring. Sometimes it means you cared enough to choose yourself. You cared enough to protect your energy. You cared enough to make room for something better. That's the quiet power of not chasing anymore. You stop begging for what's not meant for you, and you start preparing for what is. Because the moment you stop chasing him, you finally open your hands to receive everything that's been waiting to meet you once you were ready to let go. And you begin to realize that peace is not something you stumble upon, it's something you protect. The more you distance yourself from people and situations that disturb your peace, the more powerful you become. You no longer tolerate emotional chaos disguised as passion. You no longer confuse inconsistency with excitement. You no longer chase the feeling of being wanted for a moment, because you've learned that temporary attention can never replace consistent effort. You've reached a point where silence feels better than forced conversation, and solitude feels better than uncertain company. That's when you know you've grown, and you start seeing your past behavior differently. You no longer judge yourself for chasing. Instead, you thank that version of you for trying so hard to love. She didn't know better yet. She was doing her best with the emotional tools she had at the time. You realize that every unanswered message, every ignored effort, every one-sided connection was never a sign that you were unworthy. It was a sign that you were giving your love to the wrong place. And that realization hits with both pain and relief. Pain, because you see how much energy you poured into proving yourself. Relief, because now you finally understand that you don't have to anymore, and when you stop chasing, your definition of connection transforms completely. You stop asking, "Does he like me?" and start asking, "Do I feel safe, respected, and valued here?" You stop wondering how to keep someone's attention and start asking whether their attention is even something you want. You stop trying to impress, and instead you start observing. You notice who shows up, who listens, who makes an effort without being asked. You notice who matches your energy instead of draining it. You notice who brings peace instead of anxiety. And as you pay attention to those things, your entire emotional standard evolves, and you begin to walk through the world differently. Your energy feels lighter, you laugh more easily, you start doing things because they bring you joy, not because you hope someone will notice. You wear what you like, you post without overthinking, you go where you want, you stop needing your life to look like proof that you've moved on, you simply live like it. And that freedom, it radiates. People can feel it when you enter a room. It's the kind of energy that says, I'm not waiting for anything to complete me. You're already whole, and that wholeness draws in everything that aligns with it. And in that newfound space of independence, you start to attract opportunities and people that feel different. The ones who come into your life now meet you where you are, not where they can control you. They see your peace and want to add to it, not disrupt it. They don't come with games, confusion, or emotional unavailability. They come with clarity. They come with presence. They come with genuine interest, and because you've learned what it feels like to chase, you now recognize what it feels like to be met halfway. You stop settling for potential and start honoring reality. And the beauty of no longer chasing is that you also stop rushing. You no longer feel pressured to make things happen right now. You trust the timing of your life. You know that what's meant for you can't be taken from you, and what's not meant for you can't be forced to stay. That trust brings peace. It keeps you grounded even when things are uncertain. You stop clinging to what if and start embracing what is. You realize that sometimes letting go isn't giving up, it's making room for what's next. And what's next always arrives once you stop trying to control what's gone. And your intuition becomes louder in this season. You start noticing the moments your energy shifts around someone. You pay attention when you leave conversations feeling drained or uneasy. You trust the small signs that tell you when something is off. You stop romanticizing potential and start believing patterns. You understand that love isn't proven through pain, it's revealed through peace. You can still have compassion for someone while protecting your own energy. You can still wish them well without wishing them back. That's not cold, that's clarity. It's emotional intelligence born from experience. And with that clarity, your boundaries become unshakable. You no longer explain why certain behaviors don't sit right with you. You no longer feel guilty for saying no. You stop over-apologizing for having standards, because now you see that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors that only open for what's healthy. You no longer feel bad for walking away from someone who made you question your worth. You've learned that sometimes self-respect requires disappointing others, and that's okay. You're not responsible for how people react to your growth. You're responsible for maintaining it, and there's a moment, usually quiet and unexpected, when it hits you that you're finally free. You're no longer waiting for a text, refreshing your messages, or rehearsing what you'll say if he reaches out. You're not replaying old memories or imagining future conversations. You're simply at peace with the present. And in that moment, you realize that you didn't lose him. You found yourself. That was always the purpose. Every unanswered question, every moment of silence, every piece of confusion, it all pushed you back to yourself. You were never supposed to find closure in someone else. You were meant to find it in your own peace. And you start to understand that love isn't about chasing, it's about choosing, and both people have to make that choice. You stop trying to convince anyone to choose you because you know that real connection doesn't need persuasion. The right person won't leave you confused. They won't make you wonder. They won't keep you waiting for clarity. They'll meet your energy and you'll feel the ease of mutual effort. That's what love is supposed to feel like, not a chase, but a rhythm. Not anxiety, but security. Not uncertainty, but consistency. And the more you live in this truth, the more magnetic you become. You don't need to post your piece for proof. It's felt in how you carry yourself. The calm in your voice, the steadiness in your eyes, the quiet confidence in your presence, it all speaks louder than anything you could ever say. People notice when you no longer react. They notice when you stop explaining yourself. They notice when you're content with your own company. And the ones who are meant for you will be drawn to that energy, not because they want to take from it, but because they want to add to it. And as you grow deeper into this version of yourself, you realize that love is no longer about being chosen. It's about choosing wisely. You're not afraid to walk away from what doesn't align, because you've learned that peace is worth more than attention. You no longer crave intensity, you crave intimacy. You don't want grand gestures, you want quiet consistency. You don't want temporary passion, you want lasting presence. You've outgrown the kind of love that makes you chase. Now, you only want the kind of love that meets you where you stand, and you also start showing up differently in every part of your life. The same confidence that helped you stop chasing him begins to influence how you approach your goals, your friendships, your dreams. You stop settling for almost in every area, almost respected, almost valued, almost fulfilled. You want the real thing, and you're no longer afraid to wait for it. You've learned how to be patient without being passive. You're not waiting for life to happen to you. You're creating it. You're no longer running after things that drain you. You're walking steadily toward what feeds your soul. And the transformation becomes undeniable. You're not the same person you were when you chased. You're more grounded, more intentional, more aligned. You see love differently. You see yourself differently. You understand that your worth doesn't increase when someone finally recognizes it. It's been constant all along. The difference is that now you see it too. You no longer need validation, closure, or permission. You've become the kind of person who doesn't chase love because you embody it. And once you reach that level of peace, everything in your life starts to rise to meet it.